Okay, welcome to today's product review, and I'm going to review a piece of software which is called Appointment Invoice Manager. And I have it installed on my desktop here, which you can double click. Doesn't take long to load. It will run on most versions of Windows. This is running on Windows 7 64-bit. And it will run basically on every version of Windows, right the way down, probably till 95. If you try it, it will probably be a bit slow, but it will run. It's a piece of software that comes in 3 versions: Standard, Standard Plus, and Enterprise. And obviously the Enterprise is top of the range with bells and whistles. So we'll have a little look at the main screen. There are 4 sections. We have is the appointments, customers, invoices, and everything else that you need to do. You can go to the Facebook page for the software. The software itself has actually won many awards over the years. The software was first released in 2009, and that was version 1. As you can see, it's won quite a few 4- and 5-star awards. And there is a website, and you can like them on Facebook, and if you have the registered version, you can check for updates, which are made fairly regularly, and also they're free of charge. The software itself comes as a 30-day trial shareware, so you can install it, you can use it, it will function, but after 30 days it will stop working unless you pay to have the registered version. If you pay for that, obviously depending on which version you pay for. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to have a little look at the sections. Now I think we'll start with customers, because without customers you can't really make invoices. Now I have a load of customers on here, which are, some of them are real. Now for this customer, it's shown in red. Now you will find that you can delete a customer, but it doesn't remove the customer from the database, which means that you can tag it as being not used, and it won't appear in any of the lists that you can choose from. You can also insert or edit. The edit screen, for example, pops up with all of the details in. There are only 4 fields which are actually mandatory. You can see those with the star, and you can change any of this and then save it if you wish. So let's have a little look at the booking history then. So booking history, these are all the bookings made and performed for this particular customer over the years, and they go all the way back. If we go right the way down to the bottom, 2010. Okay, so you can move through the list using these buttons. So if we have a look there, now this one is in red, which means that it's been deleted. You can of course undelete, which is quite useful, and obviously that will set the record back to regular. So all of the information is always kept on the database. Now what you can do is you can have, on the Enterprise version, if you have a customer that you deal with every time or every week or every month or whatever, you can set up some defaults. So for this customer you can probably set up the name of the event, where it's being held. You can define a colour for this particular customer, the cost It can be per hour, or it can be per session. You can add on expenses, so if it's extra, like petrol, you can of course put in the start time and the end time, which are the defaults, and then this special flag here, invoice terms, actually overrides what you tell it, which is set to 30 days. So you could set that to 10 or 15, and then this customer has to pay the bill in that time period. Okay, and you can obviously save it. Now, if you have a customer that some people, some organisations want you to send an invoice to several people, then you can do that with this function here, where you can add, you can obviously edit, and you can delete. I haven't got any set up for that customer. The last two are, well, the label printer is to print this label, address label, for this customer only. But the broadcast email is quite interesting, because you can do a complete database search and perhaps send out an email to them, everybody on the list that you want. So you can put in the subject and select the customers. It will show all customers, so even if they are deleted, it will show them in the list, and then you can select them, and you can select, and they will appear in the email box there. You can type your email, which is rather slow, or if you want to, you can type it in, and then you can save it as a file for later use. So obviously you could, if you had it saved, you could put it into a text file, and then you can load it into the actual box there. And this one is about the terms and conditions, and reminding people to pay on time. Now, if you had a file like a PDF or something, then you could attach it to the email. You can then have your email addresses. You can hide them by doing that, and they won't appear in the email header. So if you've got a list of customers that you don't want other customers to know about, then you can hide the names from the list. You can send a copy to yourself on your email address, and you can have a read receipt. And you can set the priority, which is just the little flag that appears on the email. So you can set that. And then obviously you send the email. Well, I'm not going to send the email now because I've not got nothing to say to them at the moment. The label printer, we've mentioned that. Now, if you know your customer and you think, oh, I've got to go to the customer, what do I type in? Well, you could type in the first few letters of the customer name, and it will give you the first one in the list. And then you could, in theory, just scroll through until you find it. Now, obviously, you go from first record to last record. So that is basically how you set up a customer and edit the customers. So next important step, I think, is probably to have a look at the settings behind the system, because they are quite important. So if we go on to this one over here, you can set up your company details. So if you are registered, and you can put numbers in there, otherwise leave them blank. You can put your business hours and your cost per session, which is just a starting point. You can put in your your ISP for your email, your details there, and you will put in your password as well, so that you can log into your email automatically. Over here is your other information for your business. You can of course put your Skype details and everything else in there if you wish, and you can have a logo as well. The logo is a BMP file, and you can make this yourself, which is 200 by 200 pixels, and obviously you load that into the box. 200 by 200, a BMP file. So that is all, and all you do to edit the details is you just click the sidebar there. Good. Okay, this one here is also interesting because you can set the default, the cost per hour. So you could say it's £25 an hour, which is the default, or it's £25 per session. Remember, that's just default. You can change all of this when you're making a invoice, or you're making a record. So we click, and the box pops up only if you have enterprise version, because what you can do is you can have more than one diary system. So if for example you were running a village hall and you've got more than one room, then you could have one room for each diary, and you can make appointments for each room separately. Or if you had a therapy centre and you've got more than one therapist, you could put more than one diary and put appointments for that particular person in separate diaries. Now, I've only got one because there's only me. So we load it and we end up with a single page, which is the current date, and from there you can display 5 days, 7 days, 14 days, or 28 days. And obviously when you get to 28 days, it's a bit messy. There will be lots of information on the page. So if we say that on the 6th of October, which is next week, we can make an appointment at 1 o'clock, and it's 1 till 2. We can then say insert an appointment. We then have a choice of whether it's invoiced, and that means that we need to have a customer, or we can put in non-invoiced events, which you can add, for example, things that you're doing, appointments that you're doing, but you're not necessarily, do you want to invoice anybody for it? Maybe you're like me and you have an appointment, but you're paid at the end of the month for all of them, and it's separate and you haven't got to invoice anybody. So for now we'll do invoiced, and what we do is we select the customer. These are only non-deleted customers, okay? So you will not see ones that you've deleted, and you haven't got to go through a long list. So let's do this one. And you can see that the default information has appeared, and the time. Now the time there is different to this time we've set. We want it to be 1 till 2. So what we can do is we can set the time from the calendar, and it will obviously ask you if that's possible, and it will put in 1 till 2. Now we have one further thing that we can do, if it's a one event, a one-off, then we just leave it like that. And then we click add event. So we'll have one event. Or if there's going to be more than one event, like on a regular basis, so we can say that we're going to do it every other week. Okay, so we'll do the 6th and the 20th and then the 3rd. All right, so these appear in here. Now if I made a mistake, say I didn't want that one, then I can remove it from the list. So I've only got 2 dates now. Okay, so what we need to do is decide whether for these appointments, whether we're going to invoice each one individually, or whether we're going to send one invoice for both of them. And you need to remember this because it's very important that you make sure that this is unticked if you want to invoice every time. Of course, you can change that later if you want to. So we finish, and then we have them down here just in case we made a mistake, that we could delete it and then start again, or we can just accept it. So we have save events. So we're going to add 2 things to the planner, and once we've done that, it appears in the actual planner. And you'll notice that if we go to 14 days, oh no, not enough, 28 days, you'll see that there's the 2 appointments that we've made. Now, if we have made a mistake and we didn't want it on the 20th, but we wanted it, say, 2 days before, then we can just move it and drag it over. Now, if we click on the top, okay, and it puts it in the first column, then we can have 1 day. That brings us to the first day in our list. This is the appointment that we actually had, and then we moved 2 days back. To edit that, we just double click, and obviously we can change the date, but we can't change very much else. Obviously we can add some more notes if we want to. We could change the cost, we could change the times, but we can't change the customer. Alright, so that's set. Now because it's 2 appointments that they're linked together, and we can unlink them so that we actually invoice each one separately. In fact, if we do that, alright, so we can unlink them, so we don't need either of them. Okay, and then we're gonna, all listed events will be unlinked. So boom. So now if we double click, there's no, it's not linked to the other event, it's separate. And also now we can actually change the customer. Now if we then change the customer and try to link it, it won't find any customers because obviously we've changed the customer, and there's only 1 appointment for each one. Now let's link them back up again. So all we do is tick the boxes. This double arrow here tells you that this is the current one that we're looking at. You can of course filter the records by a date, but there's only 2, so it's not really important. I'm going to link the events, and they're linked now as 2 items appearing on the same invoice. Okay, so that's all very simple. If we wanted a bigger gap in this time period, we can make it 15 minutes each square. So for every hour we get 4 lines. Obviously this it does take up a little bit more space when you're trying to see the actual appointment string. Right, let's have a look at the report. This is very interesting because it will allow you to show the total number of events that you have coming up between two dates. So assuming that we have records, we can select probably let's see, September the 1st 2015. I'm not sure how many records are where they are, rather, because I don't normally use this on my computer. I use it on the laptop. Let's do 2 months. Let's do all records for now, just to see how many there are. Oh, it's 117 records. Now, this will this 2-month period will do a printout, and you can see that we could print this out if we wanted to. There are 4 pages to this, so we have 4 pages of appointments, and the important thing is that we have all of the information that we need. And so you can print that out using print, or you can scroll through the records and return back to the program. Now, the other interesting thing that you can do is between those 2 dates, so we have to set the dates again. 2015, 1, and let's change September to November and 30th. Now what you can do is you want to find out all of the appointments for a certain customer. So let's do the same customer, and between September and November there was 4, and they're listed there. Now this might be useful if you want to send the customer the dates that you have booked, and what it offers you is to create a PDF. So you don't print it out, you create a PDF which you can then email to your customer. I'm not going to go through the process because it actually creates the PDF and then it will ask you to email it, and I don't really want to email because it's a year old and we've already done these ones. So take my word for it that you'll email those over to the customer. Right. So there's one more section which we're going to look at, which is the invoicing. Right then, so first of all we have all of the non-invoiced appointments that we have on our appointment invoice diary, which we can then create an invoice from. So let's do this one here, the first one in the list. So this is for 2015, obviously. So Ashdown, if we click create invoice, we get all of the customer details. The number of events is 1. This is the invoice number and the date, and when the invoice is overdue. So this is the date that it will become overdue. Is it paid or not? You can actually have an invoice issued and it's already been paid, so you can set that. Likewise, if you've delivered it or if you've given the invoice, you can set the delivery method. But obviously if you're creating it for the first time, then it will be blank. So I'm going to create that invoice, and then what we need to do is go into the invoiced events. It looks confusing, but it's not really. All of the invoices that we've issued are here, and your current invoice that you just created is at the top. But if we're not sure, we can actually go over to here, and these buttons allow you to filter your invoices. So if we go for, we haven't delivered it, so we can click not delivered, and you'll see that there's 3 there, but the top one is the one that we just created. You can of course update it, and then you'll get this screen, and you can do all of these things here. You can add on charges. You can initiate the late payment system, which is if they haven't paid and you've reminded them and they still haven't paid, then there is a way that you can initiate penalty payments and add them onto the invoice, and then send the new invoice with the charges on it. Okay, so this is all very obvious stuff. So if we go into if you've got a barcode scanner, or you could type the invoice number, but you can also use a barcode scanner, and there is a barcode on the bottom of the invoice that you can scan it in, and it will find the invoice in the list. So assuming that we've done this invoice, we can have a look at it. All right, and it comes up as a PDF, and you can print this out on your printer for your own records, but it's got everything on it, and down the bottom is the barcode for this invoice number, and basically once you've created the invoice, you can then select it for email, and it goes to the email address of the customer. In the same way that this has 2 contacts on the it has 2 contacts on the customer details, and this is a standard file that I created before that's automatically loaded. There are defaults, and then this is the actual invoice that's been attached. I mean, the only choices that you really have to make are whether you set the priority, whether you want to copy, or whether you want to hide the email addresses. So basically you click send, and away it goes to the customer. Label print is for label the addresses of the customer that you're doing. Now the very interesting thing is we'll have a look at settings first. These are defaults for invoicing. So your payment terms, your overdue term, which is the time after the payment term runs out. You can set your daily rate of interest. This box here is for your terms and conditions, the very long version, and then the shorter version appears on the actual invoice. I would be very tempted to not to change it too much, as it fits on the invoice quite well. The invoice number, which you can set, or you can leave it as it is because it's an auto increment, and for people that pay with checks, which is very rare, then this is your payee name and it appears on the invoice. You can print these terms and conditions out, and you can save the file. So those defaults are quite important. So this section down here with the 7 days, overdue and final is to do with whether the invoice is late or not, and if it's been paid. So basically we go to this one here, manage the overdue, and it will tell you whether any of these ones here apply. Now obviously because this is last year, they're all going to be qualifying for this, so the final overdue is activated because it's well beyond the date that we are now. Now what you would do for that one is you would set that to yes and put the date, and then update the record so that it appears in the final overdue part of the program. I'm not going to do it now anyway. So for example, final overdue, if we click that, we don't have any there, but we would have had one had we selected it. So 7 days overdue. Overdue is the after the 7 days, and then the final one is 7 days after that. I believe the ones that have already been processed as late appear here. So these are all paid eventually. However, they had penalty charges added to the invoice. And if you issue a credit note, then credit notes are here. That one, the credit note system is only available in enterprise version. Now for obvious reasons you cannot edit these, you can only look at them. So if you click details, you will see all of the details, and that is it. You can't change anything because it's already been done. And that is basically all. Oh yeah, and the credit note system is there. So that is the invoices. What we need to do really is look at, we'll do this one here, alright? So this is 861. We will update it, and this time we will initiate the late payment system just to show you how that works. So initiate, it says that it's designed for overdue and needing penalty payments adding. So what we get is, that is it, that's done, right? So what we need to do is click on the late. 861 is there in the list, and we're gonna manage the invoice. So now we get a chance to add in penalty payments. Obviously this is a long time ago, so it could well be quite a lot of money. Yes it is, it's basically, it's calculated it. We're going to add on £257. So the charging period goes from the end of the invoice to the current date, which is 9 months plus 3%. You can do 3 different references. It's not important what you put, but obviously it appears on the invoice. Okay, so we do that, and obviously then you click update invoice, update PDF to save the information, so that when you look at the invoice using view, you will see that down the bottom we have the charges have been added, and there's a line there that says interest charges for that period. So, and it does tell you that this is invoice, interest charges invoice. Now, presuming that we have maybe made a mistake and we didn't mean to, not that you could ever do it that way, but maybe we don't want to charge them the invoice, the late payment, we can of course delete it. We can edit it too. We can edit it too, but that's not really possible because I've just deleted it. Okay, so there we go. That is the complete system finished. And then when we've completed the program, we exit. And that is the product review for today. Appointment Invoice Manager is a good piece of software. It's suitable for anybody that makes appointments and needs to invoice a customer. I suggest you go to the aimanager.co.uk and have a look for yourself and download the trial version. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again very soon for another product review.